Everybody, it's 580 week number 3. So, welcome. The Lit Review is the focus of week 3. And by lit, I mean literature. It's apparently so nerdy, you have to break off the "ature." You can't call it a literature review, you gotta call it a lit review. So, lit review. You have your groups, and now you're looking at this big thing, right? So there's a few places you definitely want to get started. If you're not reading Hendricks chapter 3, pause me and go set aside some time. Take care of that now. That will answer nearly every question. I'll come back to that in a moment. The other thing is that I highly encourage you to read again the PE heart rate monitor sample capstone project, because I think being able to see what the outcome of a lit review is for a course precisely like the one you're in um, brings a lot of clarity as to what you should and shouldn't do. Um, and then I'm going to give you a few tips now to kind of walk you through what that looks like, assuming that lit reviews are not something you do in your free time, that you've either done one a long time ago or that you've never done one before. So, as we look at a literature review, there's a great example actually of what his name was. It Jake? Let's see if I can find it very quickly. Jack, right? So Jack wants to figure out literature circles. He's like, you know what? I'll do a lit review because when I'm teaching young children, I have some extra time on my hands. So Jack, in the chapter, does his own literature circle lit review. Can we call them lit circles? Lit circle, lit review? I think we can. I think I just did. But the purpose of, if we take just a step back, of the lit circle, it's to really learn about your topic before you jump in to the research study. So Hendricks starts off with kind of two versions of what a study could be. There's the what is and the what works. So the what is like, all right, what is the topic? Let me learn all about it, figure out what others have studied about it. So what is, like, what is the deal with lit circles? What works is, what is it, and how do you actually implement an intervention? So that's almost entirely likely what you are going to be doing. What is it, and then how do I do an intervention around it? I already saw some really rough ideas around topics. Generally, they are all really general. They need to be really narrowed down to a thing that you can run an intervention on, something that you can measure, collect that data, and then do something with it, right? That's going to be your other chapters in your action research study. So one other thing you're going to start wanting to figure out is who's the intervention expert, and then who's the data analysis expert or experts. If you are the intervention expert, part of your deal is, pardon me, starting to figure out how you actually get to do the study at your school. So the first step of that is getting either the city CITI or the NHI certification, so you can do the research. But the other big thing the intervention expert does is gain IRB approval. And as we go on, by the end of week 8, hopefully we'll have IRB approval. So that's going to be coming up pretty quickly. But the idea is to work with typically a site administrator and say, hey, here's the thing I'm going to do, and we'll give you specific language when the time comes, so don't do it just yet. Here's the thing I'm going to do. I'm taking a class. We need to run an action research study. Here's what it is. Here's what it isn't. Can you sign off on it? Cool. There's ways you can pretty quickly introduce it to a site administrator that can escalate it where it can go off the rails pretty quickly. And the answer is no, you can't do that because you're doing human research study. And so we have some specific verbiage that's going to help you down the road. But just know that now you're either going to be kind of crunching the numbers, analyzing that data, or you're going to be collecting that data. And part of collecting that data is getting that IRB approval at a school site that you have access to, likely one you'll be working at. So if we go back to Hendricks chapter 3, there are a few things that I noticed that are incredibly helpful as you go through it. So I think the example with Jack, the example with the heart rate monitors, hopefully give you, make it more concrete, less abstract. One thing that historically I have looked at action research and gone, really, this is what we're going to do. We're going to spend hours reading studies, particularly around technology when it moves so quickly. I definitely have a bias towards action. In fact, if we take a step back at Hillbrook, we have something called the Hillbrook Way, which is kind of a version of design thinking where we ask, start, collaborate, and show. We don't ask, research for a long time, have a committee, come up with a plan, and then start. We ask, what would that be like? And then we start, just jumping right into it. Often presentations I will have at conferences are just, hey, here's a great tool, here's how it makes a difference in student choice or student engagement. And it's just based on my own experience and my own kind of philosophy of pedagogy. That's great. That's amazing. That's where I think social media comes into play. Blogs and podcasts and tweets and whatever is like, hey, here's the thing I'm thinking now. Here's the thing I'm trying now. This app just came out. This device just came out. Like, let's see what happens. And I think we also need to hold the action research where we actually look carefully at the data that's collected, looking critically at who the authors are and what their credentials are. And that's what the action research is going to be. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be more tedious than you're used to. Scrolling through some tweets is easy and often inspiring. Going through EBSCOhost and the ERIC database, not as engaging, right? And I think if we have both of those, like the bias towards action, but also the time to like call time out and say, all right, let's actually look at what other people have done, see if it actually makes a difference more than just anecdotally, and actually use that to make like a thoughtful step forward in our own practice, in our own school's kind of culture or philosophy or whatever that's going to be. So I think it's okay to have both of those. I definitely have that bias towards action over here, even though my hand's probably out of frame over here, but also taking time to pause and really do like a deep dive into a topic to see what the data and the research has already said. With that, the biggest question you're going to be asking is, right, as you look at a study, does the study contain information that'll inform my practice? Right, that's like your big 30,000 foot view, kind of your litmus test. And then once you figure it out, it's going to be a lot of kind of widening and narrowing as you go through your lit review. So Hendricks says it takes time and patience. I would agree with that. I also noticed in the discussion board, a lot of people said I like to go really deep into like one article or one something. You definitely want to do a skim, and then you're going to figure out like what gets kept, what's disregarded. So you're going to go through a bunch of stuff, widen it, and then kind of narrow it down and get rid of what doesn't fit. Look at that, probably too narrow, widen it again. And so it's going to be this constant like ebb and flow of too much info. Okay, not quite enough. Maybe I was too specific. And the goal in like a doctoral thesis is to go through all of the research ever done on your topic. That's not this goal. The goal is to ultimately get to about 30 pieces of research, and then you're eventually going to tell a story, find the themes, and figure out what that looks like, really synthesizing that knowledge into kind of I almost want to say like a narrative, like you're going to tell a story of like, we're talking about this theme, literature circles. I noticed formal and informal is a thing. Article, citation, article, citation, article, citation. Fun fact, you're going to have a section in chapter 3, how to avoid plagiarism. Super useful, critically important, particularly as you're looking at least 20 different resources that you're going to be citing. You want to make sure that you're citing them, paraphrasing them, quoting them, citing them. I'm going to say citing them a couple more times, citing them correctly and appropriately using that APA formatting that is cited correctly. It's also one of the threaded discussion boards that you have is actually looking at plagiarism. I think the topic, let's take a quick tangent. Week 3, discussion board 2, avoiding plagiarism. Like, so super important. So take a look at that, and then maybe at some point kind of pause, look back at the heart rate monitor PE lit review chapter 2, and then head back to see, oh, okay, this is where we're going. We're going to have all of these things, and then we're eventually going to have to kind of tell a story and have citations as we synthesize that data, right? As you go through it, the big things, and you definitely want to highlight and take notes in the margins, whatever that looks like, is as you look at the literature and the studies, relevance, credibility, and similarity. Make sure that you've definitely hit that. And then ultimately, just the end goal is to be able to synthesize all of these. You're not doing that this week. In fact, the lit review isn't due this week, but it's your chance to start to figure out what's out there and then start to narrow it down. And you'll do that a lot. Maybe I'll just do this until I get this as the thumbnail in the video. So like, what is he doing there? Right? It was me making the face because anyway, you get it. Probably this is going to be the thumbnail. Oh. Yeah, so there's some examples. The chapter ends hearing about Jack and his lit review about reading clubs or lit circles. Critically important. Even as someone who isn't writing an action research study, but just facilitating you writing them, I go back and of all the chapters, read chapter 3 and highlight it and reread it again and again and again. It's really clear. It's really prescriptive for what's going to be happening in what you're doing. So you have 2 discussion boards. You don't have the lit review due this week, but you very much want to start that. Like you can't do that in just 1 week. The first one's looking at research and community. We're going to be talking about your community, you're involved with your community, how an intervention might meet the needs of your community, and kind of look at it that way, kind of a needs finding start. And then the other part, as I mentioned before, is avoiding plagiarism. So looking at the Purdue OWL, what is that, the online writing lab? Yeah, so thanks Purdue for that. A couple great examples around what paraphrasing is and how to do citations correctly and appropriately. Most groups at this point of the video, as you're listening, I record this a couple days ahead of time, so I'm assuming most groups have met with me. If you've not, we can always do kind of the threaded discussion in your groups, and I can reply that way. If you were kind of doing email, but it tends to be either Blackboard Collaborate or that threaded discussion in your groups. So that is what week 3 is about. You're always welcome to jump into live virtual office hours. Sounds so cheesy. I'm sorry for that. But that's what the title is. If you need some support, if you need some thoughts, continue emailing me. There's no need to apologize for continuing to email me. If anything, over communicating in the next couple weeks is going to only serve you more and save time for all of us later to make sure that you're on the right track, focusing on the right things and narrowing your research question in the right way. So continue to reach out. We can email or discussion board, threaded discussion in your group, or hop on Blackboard Collaborate and chat also. So happy week 3. I saw a lot of anxiety in the week 2 discussion board. So hang in there. You're in good company, and you guys are doing an amazing job so far. So hang in there and keep it up. And happy week 3.